Hey, everybody. We are live. Let me make sure we're all good here. Yes, we are. Okay, welcome to my live stream midweek. I love doing live streams on Wednesday, kind of bonus episodes that I always get to throw out there for you guys. And I thought this time I might try something a little different. I thought I might try to slow down. I have this real habit of like going radio DJ when I go live. And I don't want to have dead time. I try to treat my live time like a radio air time where I don't want to have any dead space. But I realize YouTube is not radio. Anyway, and so I thought maybe if I kind of slow it down, and maybe this time I do have some things to go over with you guys today. In fact, silly enough, I can't believe I have to do this, but I left a Post-it note over on my desk. Let me go grab it real fast. All right. Here it is. Okay, in fact, a couple of Post-it notes of some things that some suggestions I got when I posted that I was going to go live today. Some people commented on a few things that they wanted to hear me discuss. So I put those here. Hey, everybody in the comments. Nice to see y'all, all the usual suspects and critics and everybody showing up, which I'm very happy to see. And very happy for your support and everything. So, yes, good. Yes, the after lunch special here. So yeah, we have some things to go over. We're going to talk about the cult mindset. And there were quite a few things lately that have been getting my attention on this, more so than usual, of course. My work and my efforts are always wrapped up in the cult mindset. But there were things that were kind of coming up and that I see on news media, on Twitter, on social media. You know, Facebook is a pretty tame place these days. At least my experience of it is. But Twitter is a hellscape, and so is Reddit. And I see just so much behavior on those platforms that is extreme, that is, way out there, that is just like, I'm gonna tear your face off kind of behavior. And of course, from my perspective, I look at that stuff and go, well, that looks a little culty. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just people having a moment. No biggie, right? But, repeated patterns of behavior from the same people, and lately, even in the ex-Scientology world, some of the drama that goes on, and this comes and goes in waves, and it's always just super annoying. And I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been a YouTuber for 9, and I've been out of Scientology for 10 years. And I've been out in this community of people for a long time and trying to, do my part to educate and inform. And I've seen every level of, we're going to get this guy and we're going to get this woman. And, I can't believe, and can you, what the hell? And all the moral outrage that goes on in communities. And I wish I could say that this sort of thing was, limited to, ex-Scientology world, but of course it's not. It's everywhere. And it's just something we have to deal with. We're never going to stop it. We're never going to, tamp it down and make it all go away. And especially I notice this kind of stuff really blows up in between the big moments, in between big news cycles or big news stories. There's not a lot to talk about or do, so it becomes this like, okay, let's get into fights with each other. And I just think that's kind of silly. Okay, so, good, Rev Girl. I'm reading Steve Hassan, Combating Cult Mindset. I'm Losing My Religion. Excellent. All right, so, yeah. And you find, and it's really quite interesting. A couple comments or a couple notes to make here just to get things rolling before we get into the cult mindset stuff directly. I've got a couple articles and a couple quotes and things I'm going to go over with y'all. And I'll try to, watch in the comments here as we're going to try to interact with you guys as we're going this time too, okay? I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to get to everybody's questions and stuff, but But I am going to do my best to make this maybe a little bit more conversational. First off, I wanted to point out that, we talk about on this channel, I've certainly talked about at length, the power of euphoria, bliss, awe, these awe experiences, AWE, right? The fact that that it's a real convincer. You can really get people on board by, making them fall in love with you. There's different kinds of love. We're not necessarily talking about, romantic love. When people get into a cult headspace, for example, they are falling in love with the cult, in that we believe there's an awful lot of, while we don't put people on, MRIs or brain scans, we believe that, the behavior indicates that they're the same chemical processes are occurring in the brain when somebody's falling into a cult situation as when they're falling in love, and all the euphoria and all the awe experience. But I also wanted to point out that the opposite is also somewhat true, that hate is also a very, very powerful motivator for belief and for action to get people moving. If they are, really, really morally outraged or upset, they will be driven to, or can be called to, action so much easier than if they are sort of meh or huh, or what's the big deal, or if it's just kind of middle of the road stuff, or it's, not hurting anybody. What's the problem? That's pretty normal, average behavior for people. But when you start riling up hate, then it becomes very easy to direct people in a very destructive, mob-like fashion. And I would caution very strongly against getting involved in that sort of thing. Efforts or temptations to hate people can be just as powerful and just as motivating as efforts to rile people up with awe or euphoria. And in fact, I would say in many ways that because of our nature and because of the fact that so much of what we do is based in fear and uncertainty and wanting to have some certainty, that it's easier to play on people's fears or their trauma or their anger or their moral outrage. I think it's easier to do that than it is to make them fall in love or make them have a euphoric or awe experience. So there's tribalism here, but I'm referring mostly to sort of individual psychology. Mob psychology, or the sociology of this, is also, of course, a major factor in the mob thing. But it starts with getting individuals upset. If you can get somebody upset, remember that when a person's amygdala and other areas of their brain are activated, these more base areas, the frontal lobes are turning off. They're not processing as much. And that leads to an inability to think critically or even want to think critically. And I'm just as guilty of this as anybody else. You get pissed off, you get upset, you get outraged about something, and you think now you're on a high horse. Now you know what the truth is. And how dare that, how dare they? And I just want to caution people to get, okay, just pull back a little bit. You take the time to actually get all the data. That's important. I think that's an important principle to live by, no matter what side of the political fence or religious fence or any other fence you might be on. Culture wars, I think this is important stuff. Oh gosh, yes, right? As Joe says here, we see this hate/disgust thing a lot at the moment with certain politicians and groups accusing sexual minorities of various things for political gain. You bet we do. We see all kinds of that. And what are they doing? They are playing on fear, right? Especially when it gets into, the children. Got to protect the children, right? And all of that. It's easy to use that. We do have to protect the children. Let's be clear. There are things that are going on out there that are not good for kids, but it's so easy to overuse that mantra to rile people up for things that are not hurting kids at all. So that's very much a very good point. Yes, Hans, I am aware that there are other people who have things to say about me and about Tony, and don't know what to say about that. I don't want to contribute to as much as I can. Here's what I'd like to say about this thing I'm talking about in very general terms right now, in terms of how groups and the ex-cult world and all that operate. It is not my mission to create drama. It is not my mission to contribute to drama. I want to deal with education and facts, and here's how this stuff is bad, and here's what we can do about it, and here's how to recover from it. That's my mission. And it is so much easier to rile up people and get a lot of clicks and a lot of interest by creating conflict. I don't want to create conflict. I want to tamp down conflict. I want to get rid of conflict. That's the direction I'm going in. Other people go in another direction because it makes money, it is easy to do, and it takes very little effort, right? It's easy. And it appeals to a certain group of people who, watchers, viewers, right, who are either curious, concerned, or are just eating popcorn, right, and are just kind of consuming it because it's entertaining. Not my thing, not my jam. So I'm going to comment on it to the degree I feel I have to, but I want to, be on a different path than that. Okay, so, and by the way, on this, because Fabian here says everybody knows how you're talking about, I want to be clear that I speak in these more generalized terms also because this is applicable knowledge, and the advice I'm giving and the education I'm trying to give is applicable across every single trolley person I've seen in the last 10 years, just in the ex-Scientology community. The ex-JW community has the same stuff going on. The ex-Mormon community has the exact same stuff going on. Social groups do this. It's pecking order, it's social hierarchies, it's I'm more important, it's I'm the cock of the walk and all that. That's human behavior, 100%. So I want to be clear that for me, from when I'm talking about this stuff, I really am not just talking about one or two people. I'm talking about the whole mess. And I have been on every end of it in the last 10 years, through Facebook groups, through social media groups, through message boards, because there used to be those. Ex-Scientology message board, right? The drama and the social hierarchy and all that, that was alive and well there too. So, atheist community on YouTube, they live for this stuff, right? It's drama, drama, drama. It's personality conflicts. It's who's up, who's down, who did bad things, who's doing good things, and people seem to get very short memories around this kind of stuff because it's so incendiary, it's so exciting, and the adrenaline starts going, and then, like I said, the frontal lobe starts shutting down. And it's quite something. So there you go. So we're having fun. Okay. So now, love and hate. So I said that about love and hate. Somebody else asked me about the Shiny Happy People documentary, and I haven't watched all 4 episodes back to back. I've seen big chunks of it. My wife watched the whole thing, and so I was kind of in and out because I was busy doing some other stuff. But I saw them hitting, the points that I covered years ago on this channel with Christina Miner, who I just kind of coincidentally ran into at the Secular Hub, met. We, got together. I did an interview with her. Then she and I spent a year putting a video together about the IBLP, the Institute for Basic Life Principles, which is Bill Gothard's outfit. And if you've watched Shiny Happy People, you know what a dickhead Bill Gothard is. To be blunt, right? The man was an incredibly abusive personality, and he developed a method, a 7-point system of biblical interpretation that even other Christian groups have written books about how bad it is. I mean, it's really, really not what the Bible says at all. And so Shining Happy People really blew this up in a fantastic way. And I'm very, very happy to see that being blown up because it needed it. The Duggar family was intimately involved with this, still is, Jim Bob and that whole clan. And and the Pearls, yes. Oh my God, I actually was so happy I got that segment of Michael Pearl demonstrating with a doll how to spank your kid, right? How to beat your kid into submission. And make no mistake, they are practicing a dogma, a Christian interpretation of the Bible that clearly in their mind justifies not just disciplining a child, they intend to break the spirit of the child. Michael Pearl's book, How to Raise Up a Child, I believe that's what it's called, analogizes raising children with beating a donkey or a horse or a dog, and how you have to break them, how they cannot have any independent will or spirit outside of what you as the parent want them to be saying or doing, no matter what. And this includes, that blanket training, which is just, so disgusting when it comes to, starting this conditioning. It's a conditioning process, you understand. This was studied in psychology all the way back in the 1950s. This is B.F. Skinner's work and many, many others. It was all the rage. Conditioning was back in the 1950s. And this is where this kind of whole concept of beating on people or disciplining people or somehow making them, training them, just like you would train an animal, is how you should treat human beings. And this, of course, violates, every level of, every line of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And human rights apply to babies just as much as they apply to adults. So I have very, very, very specific views about that. So Mike and Debbie Pearl are just monsters in human skin as far as I'm concerned. What the practices he preached are just destructive across the boards. I cannot see. It's the kind of thing that I am unable to imagine any constructive use of those principles. I can't, it's not a good or bad or, we're halfway there or it's kind of half right. No, this is the kind of thing that is completely wrong. And that's what Bill Gothard glommed onto as part of his program to homeschool children across the United States, preferably across the world is what he wanted, to bring God's message to them of biblical patriarchy, where it's a man in charge, the whole umbrella of protection against the darts of Satan and all of that nonsense. And this is really just bringing that 1950s psychology of conditioning into the home and allowing what Mike Pearl and what Bill Gothard and what Jim Bob Duggar have done for the world is created a system where fathers can run their own family cults. That's the best summary, reduced version of that, description of that I can give you, is it's a family level cult run by the father with dogma that backs him up 100% and gives him total power and authority over every action and even thought of his children and his wife. And this is, this is biblical patriarchy run absolutely to the nth degree of extreme, and for those reasons you see sexual abuse, physical abuse, labor trafficking even of children and adults in these groups, but the children are the ones who really suffer. I mentioned children earlier in terms of riling up outrage, and here I am kind of doing it, but I'm doing it with facts. Because Gothard's, dogma says what it says. I'm not making this up. testimonials from hundreds of survivors, thousands really, are on the internet. You can read their stories, and they are horrifying. And Christiana was one of those people. So it was my honor to be able to expose that years ago, and now see it exposed even more broadly. And the Duggar family is one of many such families, big families being raised on these principles. And we see the results of this in the next generation when, the kids start speaking out. And not all of them have the will or view or integrity to do so, or education to do so. They're still in that cult mindset. But some got out. And in doing so, were able to tell us about the abuses they suffered as kids. And we go, holy cow, this is just not right. This is not what America stands for. This is not what Christianity is supposed to be about. This is not, any way a godly life. This is a life of abuse and even slavery. It's really, really bad. So, yeah. So it's pretty nasty stuff. But somebody asked me to comment on that, and so there's some commentary on it. I really recommend you guys watch Shiny Happy People. It's, the bits that I've seen so far were really well put together. If I was going to be able to make a Netflix documentary, that's exactly how I would try to do it. And truth be told, I've been kind of inspired lately with this work I'm doing on this tone scale video. It's going hot and heavy, guys. And I am thinking, in the future, get this tone scale video done, which I'm kind of calling a mini document. And then the E-meter documentary, put that out. And then, maybe in some future I could put together I don't want to say a real documentary, because I think the content I produce is very real. But maybe a documentary that might be a more professional, polished team activity. I would love to write and direct something like that and get it up on Netflix or Hulu or HBO or something like that. I think that would be amazing. And why not? Why shouldn't I do that? So maybe that might be a vision for my future, as well as all the other stuff. But I get ahead of myself a little bit there. All right. So yes, one of the Duggars did get convicted of having CP and CSA and all of that. Yes. Josh Duggar, and he's in prison. And that was the product of, Jim Bob and Gothard and their system. He was red flagged early on. Josh was, as a child, as a teen, he was showing red flags of abusive behavior, and in that environment, he was handled with prayer and work, and he was basically sent off for like a year or something to some work camp kind of RPF type program for Christians, for Gothard Christians, and that was his handling, and we see in the results that it didn't handle anything. He did not get treatment therapy or any of the things that he really needed. He just got more of what made him what he already was. And it's not that dogma or that those teachings always create pedophiles, because clearly they don't. Not everybody who is in that environment becomes that. But what we have to look at is, when that does pop up, when the red flags of abusive behavior and sexual predation occur, when those red flags are popping up, are they dealt with responsibly, or are they dealt with irresponsibly? And in the case of the Duggars and the Gothard dogma, they are dealt with irresponsibly. And the results are, speak for themselves. Oh, yeah, here we go. Liz giving me even more information about this. Josh was sent to a program whose founder was later accused of by over 30 women of sexual assault. So, there you go. Pretty bad, pretty nasty stuff, I don't present this information. Some people do. I try not to present this information to try to paint a picture that all religion is going to do this, or all Christians are bad, or anything like that. There's plenty of people who use this information in a non-destructive way, and they don't abuse their kids, and they're not monsters. The problem is that dogmatically they are justified in being monsters. And the dogma doesn't do anything to reduce or take that away or say, no, don't do that. Don't beat your kid. Treat them with respect. No, that's the opposite of what they teach in the Duggar family and in the Gothard program. And their homeschooling program is all about, it can be reduced to one word: submission. Submit. You know, that's no good, right? Submission is not something human beings do well. We have natural instincts of self-preservation and of freedom and space and making our own way and independence, you know, and maybe we can argue free will, you know, all day long, but we experience the sensation of free will and we want more of it, not less. And, you know, children certainly need to have boundaries and discipline and guidelines, but they don't need to be broken like you would break an animal. That's just ridiculous. So there you go. Okay. Yeah, I'll bet. As an ex-evangelical fundamentalist, I am sure this is kind of rampant in that world. This is why I've done so many podcasts with Clint Haycock, who was an ex-evangelical minister who, exposes that level of abuse in that community, just like we've been exposing the Scientology stuff in the Scientology community. Okay, so that's some commentary on the Duggar thing. The other, the other thing was somebody brought up a point. They wanted to know about people hanging out in churches of Scientology. Do Scientologists or non-Scientologists just go hang out there like a Christian Science reading room or a library or something? Can you do that? And the answer is no, not really. Not much. I can count on maybe one, maybe two hands over all the years that I was in Scientology, and we're talking 27 years. How many times I saw somebody just come into a Scientology church or organization just to sit and read a book or hang out and talk to people. They're really not very good community meeting places or social hangouts. They really don't serve that function very well. They try to, they want to, they desperately want to. Miscavige set up community centers and Division 6 public-facing spaces for that purpose. But Scientologists don't really do Scientology that way. And most people now know how toxic Scientology is. So the last place they want to go hang out is at a church of Scientology. Would it be allowed? Could you just go hang out there? Well, yeah, theoretically. You're probably in danger, though, and every Scientologist knows this. You're probably in danger of getting wrangled up into a sales, what they call a reg cycle, right? You're going to have a talking to by a salesperson, either the bookstore officer or the registrar or some other random staff member is going to try to sell you something. They're going to try to up your membership. They're going to try to get you to donate to the building fund. They're going to try to get you to buy a book or materials or lectures. You know, it really becomes about the money so quickly. It's really a little shocking how fast it happens. And if you're not interested in spending money, the staff there really aren't interested in spending time talking to you. Because if you're just hanging out in a church and they're just hanging out with you, that's not productive. That's not going to get their stats up. They could even be accused, the staff members in that situation, could even be accused of slacking off, of being lazy, of just hanging out, of not doing their job, of being off post, taking an unauthorized break. What are you doing talking to this person who's interested in Scientology or is hanging out in the org? How dare you? Maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but if you really sit down and really start chatting it up, Oh, you're going to hear about it as a staff member, and certainly you're going to hear about it as a Sea Org member. Unless you are selling that person something, right? You're off post. And that's not ethical behavior for Scientology staff. Yeah, that's kind of the attitude in those organizations. So you don't find a Christian Science reading room kind of attitude, or a library or knowledge center kind of attitude in Scientology organizations. I don't know, you just don't. I've never seen that really reflected there. Like I said, a handful of times I watched Scientologists come in to read or listen to some lectures who were not doing a class and were not going in session. They were just coming in to take advantage of the qual library. That's what it's called. There's a library in the qualifications division of Scientology orgs where you can go, and they're supposed to have copies of everything there. All the public level Scientology materials are supposed to be there, including, by the way, every book or encyclopedia or pamphlet or issue that L. Ron Hubbard ever referenced. So like books like The Golden Bough, or what would be another one? What's his name? Buckminster Fuller's books by him. Hubbard referenced those. Or Science and Sanity by Korzybski, right? There's supposed to be a copy of that in the Qual Library. So if Hubbard ever mentioned it in a lecture somewhere, copies of those materials are also supposed to be in those Qual libraries. So yeah, the books he plagiarized from, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, hanging out with the Sea Orgs, quite the oxymoron. You are so right. So that's kind of just to address that question that came up from somebody there. So I thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, so why don't we... yeah, you'd get routed. That's right. Exactly. Somebody said, if I walked into Big Blue and asked if I could just sit there and read a book, I think I'd be routed. Yeah, you definitely would. Okay, let me take a little sip here and we'll get into our next thing. Excuse me. All right. Cult mindset. I thought of an analogy that I wanted to throw it out to you. It's probably a little awkward, but I was trying to think of something, and this was what came to mind immediately as, how can I explain this to people? And I want to be clear that the cult mindset extends far beyond Scientology. I dare say at this point, having studied this stuff and paying attention to social media and how people interact, I dare say that social media itself can create little cult mindsets so quickly, frighteningly quickly. And the kind of internet mob you hear about from time to time, the cancel culture thing, the pile-ons that occur, this is a sort of shade of, or a reflection of, cultic mindsets. My way or the highway, us versus them, truth becomes optional. And we see people either pimping for their cult leaders on social media, whether they're politicians or religious leaders or celebrities or whatever cult of personality they're involved in. They go on social media and promote that. And you see some of these people who will just outright say, I saw a tweet this morning, absolutely blew me away. Some guy saying, yeah, I've seen all the evidence this is on Trump now, right? And I know some of you might not agree with me about Trump, but let me just say this anyway, because I think I really do think it's not a controversial thing at this point to say this dude has a cult of personality built up around him. I just don't think that's a controversial or debatable point. It's so obvious in the behavior. And you had somebody posted this tweet that said, yeah, I've listened to the tapes and I don't care. I don't care. I don't care if he's a criminal. I don't care if he violated the law. I don't care. And I just thought, there it is. There it is. That's exactly what we're talking about. It's the sort of thing where, here's my stupid analogy, is if you were playing a baseball game with another team, there's two teams playing, And one of the teams scores a run, and the other team refuses to acknowledge that run, refuses to acknowledge any of the runs that were made by, Team A. Team B is like, nah, you didn't score. No, 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 no. And if all the fans in the stands, then who all stood there or sat there and watched the runs being scored, collectively all said with the team, well, that's our team, and our team said you didn't score, so therefore you didn't score. So we don't believe it. And here's the other team, here are the fans of the other team going, it's on video, it's right there. How can you argue this? And a whole group of people, imagine half of a stadium, folding their arms, some of them literally will do this. They'll just cover their ears. And they'll say, no score. You guys didn't score at all. Nope, didn't happen. Fake news. That's the cult mindset. It's unbelievable. You can't get your head around it. You look at it, it's right in front of you, and you think, how can this be? How can this be? How could it be that you and I watch the same thing happen in the real world, and your takeaway from it is the exact opposite of what happened, of what the facts, what the evidence show, what I can show you on video. I can bring you a gaggle of people who will tell you this is what happened. And here's a collection of people who are just, no, they didn't score. Not once. Our team won. That's a cult. That's the cult mindset. And that closed-minded attitude, that refutation, ignorance, and just blatant hypocrisy, that refutation of evidence and facts is what we have. This is what I've been talking about for years, right? This is the cult mindset. People, I sometimes will challenge people about Scientology stuff on social media, because you'll hear things like, Tom Cruise or David Miscavige, they're running, they're scared, they're hiding. No, they're not. No, they aren't. They're not at all. They're not afraid of me or anybody else. There's no YouTuber who's bringing David Miscavige to his knees with worry and anxiety. That's just not happening. And people want to be hopeful. They want to see change, and I get that. I do, and I know I'm just a big balloon popper when I say stuff like this, because we want to know that we're doing good. We want to know we're making change, and we are. I've pointed out the change that we're making. There's no more RPF. Forced abortions are not anywhere near like they used to be. They don't take people's passports anymore. There's all kinds of changes. But let's not over-exaggerate the importance of what we're, the effects of what we're doing here. The cult mindset, as I just described it with that kind of lame sports analogy, that's the mindset. That's where their heads are at. Tom Cruise and David Miscavige are 100% in the zone that Scientology is not only the most important thing in the world and the best thing in the world, but that it's winning, that it's succeeding like never before. And David Miscavige knows the statistics of Scientology don't say that, but the mission of Scientology and his purpose in life is so strong that those statistics can be relegated to there's somebody else's fault, see? It's not Scientology that's to blame. It's not him who's to blame. It's these SPs. It's all these management SPs. It's all these staff SPs. It's all these jerk-offs who aren't getting their job done. And so they can maintain belief, in the goodness and righteousness of their cause without any doubt or quibble, and tell themselves a story that has nothing to do with reality. That Scientology TV, let me tell you, let me let you in on something else. Like Scientology TV, David Miscavige actually believes that Scientology TV's programming is going to work, that it's going to bring people in. And the only reason it's not is because people aren't doing the job of promoting it and marketing it right. Or it's not being distributed to enough people, right? It's only on DirecTV. We need to get it on more channels. But it's not the work, and it's not the subject. It's not Scientology itself that's to blame. It's not the programming that's to blame. It's just some SP. And it can always be some SP. So this mindset, this cult mindset, doesn't get touched. And that's why I can say, having lived this for decades, I mean, I was there. And the power of this is hard to fathom unless you've been in an extreme headspace. And some of you have. You know exactly what I'm talking about. There are no doubts. There's no anxiety. There's no reservations. This is what we're doing, and anyone who says otherwise is a goddamn liar. You know? You're just a liar. You're just an SP. You're just a scumbag. I don't have to listen to you. Block, mute. Bah. You know? That's that mindset. And it's really, really bad. But it's hard for people who don't get that mindset, or who haven't been in it, or don't think too hard about, you know, this stuff. They don't quite get their head around it. They keep projecting themselves into that situation, trying to understand it. And instead of realizing that they don't have any experience that compares with that, so they you know, they have to get creative. They try to project themselves into it. I think this is what happens. And, you know, and if they were in that situation, they believe, they wouldn't believe. They would see the cracks. They'd see the problems. They would see the issues, and they'd be like, oh, hey, wait a minute. Something's not right here. Something's wrong with this. I think I need to start questioning this. Well, that's what you would do if you were not in a cult mindset. That's exactly what you would do, and you'd be right for doing so. And as people start waking up from a cult mindset, that is what they start doing, because their frontal lobes start engaging again, and they're able to start thinking a bit more critically about what's going on. But if you think Tom Cruise or David Miscavige, or, you know, or Shelley even for that matter, are up there thinking like you do, then I really need to adjust your head around what this is all about, because they do not. They are not. Any more than, you know, it's all, I'm always hesitant to bring this up as a comparative, but it's the only thing I can get across that will communicate the intensity of the mindset. And that is if I start comparing it to like terrorists. And terrorists, of course, are violent. They're radicalized extremists. And Scientologists are not radicalized extremists for the most part. Some are, but not most of them. So, but the level of belief, the extremism of their dedication and loyalty and passion about the subject, that's what is the same. And it's just a little bit more push, a little bit more, and you could radicalize them. And you could turn them to violence. And some Scientologists over the years have been driven to violence. They've done OSA staff, right? They break and enter, they follow people around, they violate their human rights, they violate the law, they violate civic rights. And sometimes there have even been, you know, real violence of fights and altercations and things like that. And we still don't know, you know, it's still a bit of a mystery to me how Shelley's mom died. You know, as an example of like, wait a minute, what's going on with this, right? That's an interesting question. Let me think about that for a second. If David Miscavige made a deep fake video of L. Ron Hubbard prophesying, and then telling everyone to drop their bodies and join him on Target 2 on New Year's Eve, would they do it? No, I don't think so. Not that simple. I don't think it would be quite that easy. I think David Miscavige could, if his back were against a wall and he either lost his faith, or if he was, you know, fully immersed in it, like kind of one extreme or the other. I think he could commit violence, and I think he could convince people around him to do so as well. But I don't know that en masse, you're going to get Scientologists to do that, because the level of extremism required in order to do something like that is is kind of David Miscavige inner circle level. I mean, Sea Org level. It's like, it's really up there. We're talking Heaven's Gate kind of stuff. And for Heaven's Gate, of course, part of the dogma was they had to shed their mortal coil, so to speak, in order to join the aliens up above who were going by, flying in the tail of that comet. So that's kind of what you would have to create or rile up in people. And I think that would only really practically work out in a relatively small setting, rather than, you could play this at an event and everybody would just go mindlessly zombie, home and do away with themselves. I don't see something like that happening. Liz asked, does he really have faith? I think you're referring to Miscavige there, and yes, I believe he does. I talked about this last week in my Friday show, that I've been speaking with this Mitch Brisker person who has just recently been making the rounds on SPTV and stuff, and I've got an interview with him. It's going to go up this weekend. We recorded it actually before he started doing all this other stuff, but my podcast goes up on Saturday, so that's when it's going up. And yes, I do believe that Miscavige absolutely, in talking with Mitch and his years of time with Miscavige, it appears that he is or has been a true believer, like a full-blown, absolutely believes that all this stuff is going to work, and he's endlessly frustrated about the fact that all these SPs are letting him down because he's working so hard to make Scientology make it, and he keeps destroying everything around him in order to try to make this thing go. Miscavige is suffering from an excess of cult mindset, you could say. I'm told he's a real intelligent guy, but, intelligence and all of that doesn't matter. This cult mindset thing that I'm talking about intelligence has nothing to do with it. If anything, your intelligence only makes it worse. And do I think that DM will ever lose his faith? I think it's entirely possible. And in fact, there are indications that he may already be losing his faith in some of his actions. But I don't want to, I've already made the mistake of over-assuming with Miscavige that he didn't have faith, wasn't a true believer, and therefore was just running a con, knowing he was running a con. And that was all there was to it. And I went there based on supposition of connecting dots, trying to figure out who this guy is. And now that I've got this new information, combined with old information, I go, no, actually, it's worse than we thought, and he actually is a true believer. And if he loses his faith, there could be, if he were to lose it, like if he really realized the way I did, right, 10 years ago, if he had a moment like I did where he suddenly realizes, oh, Hubbard was a complete lying scumbag. See, because Miscavige knows Hubbard told lies, but he still believes in the mission, right? But if that were all to go away, that could be a dangerous place. It could be dangerous to be around him. I don't know what that guy would do, because we already know he's a violent person. We already know that, right? He already has those tendencies. And he has an incredible capacity to lie to himself. Like, incredible. Like it's Olympic champion level. So if he were to lose all those lies, lose that faith, I wouldn't want to be around him. That's a scary place. That's Jim Jones. That's David Koresh, right? These guys had their backs against a wall, and look what happened. That's what happened, right? That they got their backs pushed against a wall, and they reacted. If Miscavige's back is against a wall, or if Miscavige is in a situation where it all falls apart in his head and he becomes hopeless, yeah, that would be bad. And I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but I want to be real. I want to talk about this in real terms, and I just don't see that Scientology is on the brink of collapse and David Miscavige is sweating bullets every day. I just don't see that. And I don't see any evidence of that. I see Scientology is in a lot of legal trouble right now. I see that they are closer to prosecution in a criminal court than they've ever been. But where is it? Where's the prosecution, right? Where's the FBI case? Where's the LA County case? We just have civil trials now. And civil trials are not going to bring down Scientology. I'm sorry, guys, but they're not. They expose Scientology. They reduce the numbers of Scientologists, right? That's what the civil trials do, is they bring a lot of press and a lot of media, right? And a lot of exposure. And those are all huge. Those are 100 thumbs up. We need that happening. But let's not fool ourselves that that's going to end Scientology. Because it's been 10 years I've been doing this. I've watched a lot of claims about how Scientology is on the brink. I've made those claims. I have gone all in on that and had total egg on my face. And it'll happen when it happens. And until it does, predictions about its demise may be slightly exaggerated. But that means we need to fight harder. I'm not saying any of this to make it doom and gloom and make it like all of our efforts don't mean anything. They absolutely do. What we do counts. It does matter. But let's be real about what we're going to accomplish. That's kind of where I'm going in on that direction. So in my opinion, what will end Scientology? Time. Right? It's an international subject. The books are translated all over the world. I think we need to sort of define for ourselves, Ron, what is it? What does it mean to have the end of Scientology? All the orgs close? Yeah, that could happen. But that's not going to end Scientology as a subject. All those books, all those lectures, all those independent Scientologists, they're still going to be around. But the mother church bringing that down, losing tax exemption, losing Tom Cruise, losing David Miscavige with no competent leadership taking over, and I don't mean to imply Miscavige is competent in the process, but if Scientology were to gain competent leadership, real management leadership, they could turn the whole thing around. People have short memories. I don't want that to be true, but it is true. People have short memories, and if Scientology reinvented itself, it could keep going for a very long time. The only reason that so many people are so pissed at Scientology is because they won't own their mistakes. They never admit they're wrong, ever. That's part of the cult mindset, is you can't ever be wrong. So Miscavige never admits error or mistake, and that's one of the reasons people are so pissed off at him. Right? It's the same thing with the damn Catholics. It's like, just quit moving the priests around. Just stop it. Prosecute them. Put them in jail. That's where they belong. Or at least get them away from kids and get them therapy or something. But, it doesn't seem like that happens. That's why people continue to be pissed about it, And it's the same with Scientology. They could turn it around, but Miscavige is so in a bubble world of belief that he doesn't perceive the real world the way you and I do. He just doesn't see it that way. Anyway, so just on and on about that. As far as who would take over if Miscavige got hit by a bus tomorrow, Liz, that's a great question. And there are a few people who might step up. I know a couple names. I don't know that it's going to do any good to name them. There are people in management of Scientology who are either in Miscavige's inner circle or at the level of what's called ILO, the International Liaison Office. That is upper middle management of Scientology. That's basically where Scientology is being run these days. Miscavige orders things, and the ILO staff are the ones who basically get it done, because management-wise, because he's dismantled the international management structure. I laid all that out in a video years ago. All that's gone. All the international management stuff, the International Management Executive Committee, the Watchdog Committee, international management as a structure, gone. And that's one reason why Miscavige is, working himself to death, as he's taken on all that work. or passed it down to upper middle management. And so if he disappeared tomorrow, for whatever reason, heart attack, jail, takes off with the money, whatever, somebody from that level is probably going to step up and have to take over. What access they're going to have to all the accounts and passwords and everything, and the lawyers and everything else, is anyone's guess. There's a lot of hidden stuff in Scientology that you and I don't know anything about, as far as how the levers of control that Miscavige uses to run the operation. And whoever takes over is going to have to learn those levers real fast. So it might well be even a council of people. You know, they could go similar to how the elders, I believe, of the Jehovah's Witnesses sort of set things up, where it became, you know, a council of people. They could set that up. They could recreate the management structure and put people there and start building or rebuilding the International Management Executive Committee and the Watchdog Committee and all the things that I laid out in that video that are how Scientology is supposed to be structured. If somebody stepped up, they could start putting all that back in place instead of running it the psychotic way that Miscavige does. And if they did, then that would become a group activity. Management would actually become a group activity again in Scientology, and there would be give and take and push and pull, and you know, that kind of tension would be happening instead of an authoritarian dictatorship. And if that were to happen, I'm pretty sure you would start to see a kinder, gentler Scientology. That's how I think it would run, because when Scientology was run that way under Hubbard, and when Hubbard was sort of off the lines a bit, that's kind of how it was. That was the 1970s, when Scientology was at least at the public level, was a much tamer, less authoritarian kind of thing. It wasn't any more true, and it wasn't any more workable, and auditing was still just as fucked up as it is now. But so many of the other control structures of Scientology weren't really there the same way they are now under Miscavige. So if all that went away, we would see, we could see a very different Scientology, even a Scientology that might even own up to its own mistakes. But that's really probably asking too much. Getting, again, talking about the cult mindset. The cult mindset does not allow for the group to be wrong. L. Ron Hubbard can never be wrong. David Miscavige can't be wrong. So therefore, I, as the cult member, must be wrong. And that's how it always goes. That's like kind of how the equation goes. In order to maintain that mindset, you have to think that way. So, so these are some of the things that I think about, which lead me to go, hey man, this thing ain't ending tomorrow. No, Elon Musk is somebody who's built up a cult of personality around him. He doesn't worship other people. He wants people to kind of worship him. I personally, my take on Elon Musk is he's very much like L. Ron Hubbard, except he got an awful lot of money early on. Yeah, he could have fixed everything. I'm not really a big Elon Musk fan. I used to be, but I'm kind of not now. I don't know, Liz, if I'm rubbing you the wrong way in saying that, but I'm not the biggest fan. Okay, but anyway, I digress. All right, let's get. Yeah, exactly. He's very good at that. Let's go over a couple other things I wanted to go over with y'all today. I pulled a couple articles that I thought were fascinating on this topic of the cult mindset. And some people wrote some stuff a couple of years ago that really encapsulates a lot of what I wanted to communicate, because it totally parallels where I'm coming from. So let me go over a couple of these things, and maybe this might be kind of interesting. You let me know. I'll just go a little bit at a time and check in with you guys here. This is an article from 2018 from The Federalist. And the title of the article is by Stella Morabito, and it's called How to Recognize the Cult Mindset in Yourself and Others. And I'm not going to read the whole article, but I do want to read a couple bits, okay? How many more Jonestowns and Wacos will have to occur? Oh, geez, I have been on I am so sorry, guys. I didn't throw the comments up on the screen. My bad. How many more Jonestowns and Wacos will have to occur before we realize how vulnerable all humans are to influence? And if any of you didn't catch my live stream on influence, I think it was last week, I really, really would love you guys to watch that, because I went over the 7 points or categories of influence for people, and they're powerful. They are what I went over in that podcast is the heart and soul of why Scientology gets away with what it does. So how many more Jonestowns and Wacos will have to occur before we realize how vulnerable all humans are to influence? That is the key question of cult expert Margaret Singer's excellent book, Cults in Our Midst. A really, really good book. It's one of the fundamental books of the entire cult thing, an ex-cult thing. And there's some data in here as to why, which I found absolutely fascinating. Singer's work serves to prevent the tragedy of people being psychologically manipulated into blind obedience that harms and even kills. It should be required reading for everybody because too many people are ill-prepared to resist undue influence and coercive persuasion. In this author's retrospective of the Jonestown Massacre, I noted that Americans don't seem to have seriously contemplated the harsh reality and consequences of coercive thought reform. It can easily destroy lives and rob people of the capacity for independent thought if we are not vigilant about how it works. If there is a theme to my channel, there it is. Yet many are loath to admit that brainwashing is an actual reality to which we are all vulnerable. I love it when I find articles in major publications that are echoing what I've been saying for years, right? And this is back in 2018, but I was saying it then too. 40 years ago, people were shocked by Jonestown. Yeah, here we go. But you don't have to be a part of the death cult to experience various means of exploitive persuasion designed to modify your speech, behavior, attitudes, thoughts, and relationships. So why not study such things to build up your defenses? Oh, thanks for clarifying, Liz. On Musk there, I didn't want to upset anybody with that, but yeah, I definitely don't see Musk in a good light. Oh, I'll answer this one. Supreme Rula asks, I like that. Supreme Rula. Do you agree with Mitch Brisker that Sea Org members have a decent standard of living but poor quality of life, or poor in both respects? I think the reason that Mitch is saying that is my own take, okay? But I believe the reason Mitch is saying that is because the physical spaces that have been built at the Golden Era Studios production property in Hemet, or San Jacinto, I should say, and the physical spaces of the birthing in the UK, in Florida, to a lesser extent in LA, are, to his eyes, they weren't that bad. In fact, at Gold, they were beautiful. They were wonderful. There was really nice buildings, and there was a swimming pool, and there was a mess, and it cost millions of dollars to make the kitchen area and the place where people eat. So all of that looks really great. And I think that's what he's kind of looking at when he says they have this high standard of living. But the working conditions and the living conditions there, they're not allowed to be luxurious or take advantage of those things, or get days off, or get, you know what I mean? Like as Rinder and even Rathbun back in the day, and Tom DeVock and Amy Scobie, and so many people who have come out of that base and those situations have told us, yeah, it looks great, but try living there under Miscavige's thumb, and you don't want to be anywhere near any of that. So I think Mitch is still sorting some stuff out on that. But I think that I think it looks like they live a great lifestyle, but I think the actual lifestyle itself is for dog. I think dogs are treated better. I think Miscavige's dogs get treated better than Sea Org members at the Gold base. So that's my take on that. All Okay, interesting question. Is it possible for ex-Scientologists to be completely unfamiliar with the TRs? Not really. I mean, if they were in Scientology for any length of time, they're going to hear about TRs. They're introduced very early on. Usually, it's the first course people take is the communications class. So if you're running into or hear about ex-Scientologists who don't know anything about TRs, you're talking to somebody who barely scratched the surface of their experience with that. All right. Cool. So let's go back to our article here. I just wanted to check in and see how things were going here. There's another bit here, and this is back from 2018. Remember, this is pre-COVID. And yet there's a bit here that I thought was really good because it talks about political correctness, but now we have other terms for this. But the sentiment is the same. Consider this, right? Consider for a moment today's culture, which is saturated with the constant agitation of political correctness. It rarely allows for any real discussion or debate without automatic vilification of those deemed politically incorrect. Right? You guys have seen this. Sadly, this is especially true in the very place where there is a tradition of people expecting to engage in real debate, the college campuses. We can't deny that political correctness has a lot of disruptive effects on discourse, such as inducing self-censorship that can cause us to feel socially and mentally isolated. Sure does me. Manipulation of our basic fear of ostracism through the threat of smears, promotion of mob rule, and an authoritarian nature that promotes the power elites who use it. Any of this sound familiar? Because as far as I'm concerned, it's only gotten worse since 2018. COVID blew it up. We were already on a little bit of a rising powder keg of authoritarian attitudes, and political correctness was a symptom of that. Cancel culture is another one. All the arguments about freedom of speech and rights and all of that. These are all symptomatic of authoritarian issues. And, by the way, economic stress, too. We cannot forget that little bit. So this person writes, wait, those features are all rather cult-like, no? This acceptance of the anti-thought nature of political correctness is pretty much everywhere. 95% of the mass media promote it. 95% of celebrity culture promotes it. And obviously on college campuses, the academics are 95% in compliance with political correctness. You can't deny that cult-like tribunals against wrongthink are pretty much everywhere. In the media, in celebrity cultures, in our legislators, among judges, in human resource departments all over the corporate world, and most obviously on college campuses where youth are scared to death of being ostracized for expressing a politically incorrect thought. And, you know, I've never brought this up before in talking about my educational experience at Salford, but what I just read is absolutely reflective of my experience at Salford. And that's a UK university, and I did it online. And even in lectures and in group chats, you know, there were some things I was absolutely not going to bring up for fear of, you know, getting dogpiled on. Culture war points, political correctness points, etc. Even when we were dealing with education about cultic principles and groupthink and all the phenomena of cults, I was still in an environment where it really wasn't always totally safe for me to say everything that was on my mind. And maybe everybody shouldn't just be saying everything that's on their mind. But when you have points that you want to bring up and you're terrified of doing so because of the culture around you, and these are important points or, you know, human rights points or something like that, we might have some problems. And that's what got me thinking about this stuff, you know? Check in with you guys here. Cool. All right, so just a little bit more and I will be done with this. What should most shock us is how often Americans seem to increasingly mimic many of the behaviors of cult recruits. Self-censorship, peer-modeled behaviors, emotions ruling their sense of reason, obedience to the mob, and adulation of politically correct idols and celebrities. All of these behaviors are exhibited in the Jonestown death tape as Jones rationalized revolutionary suicide and his followers obeyed. Obviously, the magnitude of what happened there is far, far greater. But the path we're on as a society is eerily similar if you stop to think it through. So that, like I said, kind of mirrored some of my thinking and some of what I've been, trying to talk about for quite a long time. It was never my intention starting this channel to get into politics, ever. But when Trump came along, I was like, Jesus, this guy looks like L. Ron Hubbard, and he talks like L. Ron Hubbard, and he sounds and he acts like L. Ron Hubbard. Didn't anybody else notice this? And I felt like I was in that baseball game where half the stadium was like, no, I didn't see that. That didn't happen. That's not true. And you're like, but it was, it's right there. It's on video. No. It's very frustrating. Oh, yeah, Liz, I have heard of the Moorish American Nationals. That is indeed a deep dive into weirdness. And I think I actually touched on that with John P. Capitalist. That's a pseudonym for a person who has worked with me on my podcast a couple times. And we talked about that group. I believe it was them. I believe it was the Moorish American Nationals. And that was wild. That was an interesting conversation. I can't remember the name of that podcast right now. He and I have done a couple podcasts about sovereign citizens and the Queen of Canada. And I think it was in that one that we ended up talking about these Moorish American Nationals. We've done a couple shows together. Oh, yeah, that's a very good point, OBG Foster. It's absolutely true. You can't discuss cult mindset in public schools because the parents and religious leaders would be offended. That's true. That is very true. Also, students would question wearing school colors or worshiping football players. Yeah, hopefully you'll be seeing John P. pretty soon, actually. Let me just check on something here real fast because I am curious if something has just occurred. Yeah, okay. So another channel went live and a bunch of people jumped off to go listen to more of the same news about Shelley that's already been reported on. Absolutely boggles me. All right. So anyway, there was another thing I wanted to go over with you guys, and then we will. Then I think I'll be done talking about the cult mindset. Okay. This was a really interesting article in the Online Psychology Degree Guide. This was another what to know about the psychology of cults. And these are 10 points to know about the cult mindset. And I thought, hey, this might be useful and interesting information to get out there. Dealing with trying to get across, this mindset. All I'm really trying to do with this is not make everybody wrong or feel bad or something like that. I'm really just trying to show that it's such a different headspace that it's really kind of hard to get your wits around. Because it's not like the headspace you're in. It's extreme. And here's some of the reasons why and some of what goes on. Cults are attractive because they promote an illusion of comfort. It's an illusion, right? People want comfort. They are fearful. They are uncertain. They want answers. They want solutions to their problems. And if somebody offers them one, they'll take it rather than inspect it very closely to make sure it's a solution, when it's like an emotional problem. And that is one of the ways that cults get people, right? Is they promote an illusion of comfort. They satisfy the human desire for absolute answers. I don't know why. I've never been able to figure it out. But for some reason, people want absolute certainty. It gives them comfort. It satisfies their needs. They don't have to, maybe it's because they don't have to think about it anymore. They don't have to wonder about it anymore. Is God real? Is there an afterlife? Am I going to make any money? Is my life going to go anywhere? Do I have any purpose? Why don't my kids love me or something? They got all these problems or issues, and they want absolute answers to these problems, and cults provide those absolute answers. And unfortunately, science and, responsible science, responsibly done science, doesn't. It doesn't. It forces us, psychology almost uniformly moves in the direction of trying to help a person find their own answers. Cults are way easier. Here's all your answers. Here you go. Here they are, all on this Post-it note. Here you go. Right? And if you got that, you don't have to think about it anymore. And with that illusion of comfort, you're going to hold on to that real tight, New recruits are love bombed. That is something we have talked about. Also, we've called it manipulative kindness. I love that term. Interestingly, statistically speaking, I don't know if you all know this or not, but women are more likely than men to join a cult. I find that absolutely fascinating. And according to various research, women make up a whopping 70% of cult members around the globe. And there's different ideas as to why this is. Has to do with, there's a lot of different reasons being offered up, but I don't know how many of these are actually fact-based. So I'm not knowing that I want to get into them at all. But it's an interesting point and certainly bears more research. Interestingly, and this is kind of interesting, many cult members have rejected religion. What do they mean by that? It's treated more than Many people who join cults have experienced mainstream religions at some point in their lives and rejected it. My mom, she came out of the Catholic Church. I knew a lot of people in Scientology who were ex-fundamentalists, ex-Christians, Jews, but Scientology was their religion. They used to practice the religious practice of Judaism, and what I didn't meet were very many former Muslims. Did not meet anybody in that criteria. Cults maintain their power by promoting an us versus them mentality. So again, speaking to the cult mindset, that it's crucial. It's a crucial part of the mindset that it's us versus them, not us and them, not us or them. It's us versus them. They're the bad guys. We're the good guys. And that teammanship, that tribalism that it gets instilled artificially, uses our tribal social hierarchy instincts against us. I hate that. Us versus scary them. Exactly right. Thank you for that. Cult leaders are masters at mind control. That is often true. You will find that cult leaders don't need to study that much. They figure this stuff out almost uniformly, perfectly organically. They just figure it out because there's only so many things you need to know how to do in order to control people and get them on your side and get them riled up for you and against them. Public humiliation, for example, self-incrimination, brainwashing, paranoia. I mean, all this stuff is part and parcel of the cult mindset. And of course, also part of the mindset is that cult leaders have no idea that they're in a cult. Right? They're the last people who are going to believe that they're in a cult. It really almost does no good whatsoever. I've even done this a couple times, though, on social media, of trying to talk to somebody in a cult and kind of point out to them, hey, this is kind of culty, or, you might be in a cult. It's really so much wasted breath. I really should know better, because the last thing anybody who's in a cult is going to believe is that they're in a cult, right? It's, again, comfort, purpose, meaning, social network, right? Community. All of these needs are being fulfilled by the cult. So the last thing they want to do is tear it down or think critically about it. Right? They just don't want to. They don't want to go there. It's too painful. We see this with battered wives or battered domestic spouse situations as well. They just don't want to deal with the truth of the situation because there's all this other stuff that they think is so good about the situation that they don't want to look at that awful, nasty stuff. And so they don't. They just don't look at it. And a lot of people out there, I've run into this a few times, and I really want to stress this. A lot of people out there will tell you, well, they have a choice. And if you watched my podcast with Janja Lalich a few weeks ago, her whole model of cultic behavior is called bounded choice. Because what the cult specializes in doing, in fact, perhaps one of the most powerful things, the most powerful thing about what cults do is they bind your choices. So you don't have the choices that other people think you do. Other people objectively can look and go, oh, you could step out of that any day. You don't have to have that relationship. You don't have to be a Scientologist. You don't have to put up with that abuse. But for them, it's not a choice. They don't think they have a choice. Those just don't exist. It's weird, but it's true. And finally, and they have a long and lasting effect. Just because somebody comes out of that situation doesn't mean they're immediately over it, right? At all. Not even close. So, I love that quote from Groucho Marx. I think that's true. I would not be part of any group that would have me as a member. Yeah. The only thing, let me say this, Jew Martin says here, I tried one time to make a friend see he was in a cult. Even doing it in a not direct way didn't help at all. We just ended up fighting. Yeah, it goes there. One of the best ways, and I'll remind everybody, because I used to talk about this years ago more often, is one of the best ways of helping somebody to realize the situation that they're in is to see if you can get them to watch or learn about or find out about other cults, not theirs, not their situation. Don't touch them or their beliefs or their guru or their situation. Talk about other groups, other situations that are culty. If you're talking to a Scientologist, don't talk to them about Scientology. Don't try to show them Going Clear. Don't try to show them My Scientology Movie. Show them Shiny Happy People. Show them the documentary on Hulu about that guy at the university. God, it's awful that I am forgetting that right now. St. Lawrence, the St. Lawrence University cult, right? That guy. Show them those kind of things. See if they'll watch that, or see if they'll get exposed to, ex-Mormon stuff, or, or JW stuff, or other culty stuff, the Mooney stuff, right? But don't attack their system or their guru. It's that roundabout. Because what tends to happen is they start connecting dots themselves between, the St. Lawrence guy or the Moonies or the Shiny Happy People and their own situation. That's generally how to more easily and effectively go about trying to wake somebody up from their cult, is never attack their cult. That just isn't going to go. Yeah, any of the culty TV shows of recent years would be a great help. That's absolutely right. Wild Wild Country is a great example of that. The Path, right? Even you'd think, for Scientologists, I wouldn't recommend Handmaid's Tale because Elizabeth Moss is in it and she's a Scientologist, so they're probably not going to draw any parallels at all with that. Just like they'll watch Magnolia with Tom Cruise in it and they'll never connect the dots between Tom Cruise's character in there and who was just a total misogynistic slimeball. They'll never connect the dots between that and the real Tom Cruise, right? But yeah, Wild Wild Country is a real good one. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. All right. So if you want to throw, if y'all want to throw any more questions or anything at me, I am here for a little bit longer here, I think, and I'm happy to chat with you. Good, Jew. I'm glad that you guys are back to being friends. That's excellent. Oh yeah, the FLDS. Oh yeah, that's another really good one to show people because that's so extreme. And all the polygamy stuff and all the weird behavior and everything. But what tends to happen, how it works is usually it's a testimonial. The ex-members who are interviewed will usually talk about thoughts or feelings or controls that they were under. And those are the kind of things that will usually start getting under a cult member's skin. Right? It's not seeing, sometimes it's seeing the guru and seeing how the guru controls his members. Sometimes that also helps them connect some dots. But usually it's in the testimonials, right? I was raised and I was beaten and I was this and I was that. And then the various thises and that's, they'll start connecting dots to their own situation. Unless they're in, such a headspace that they just can't even fathom thinking critically about their organization or their group, in which case it's going to take some time. It's just going to take some time to wear them down. And more education is usually how I would try to approach that situation. All right. Well, I think I have made all the points I wanted to make here today. Let me see how we're doing. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. All right, good. I did want to mention, since I have you all here and a little bit of time, two things. Thing number one is I would love more support for my channel. So I'll just throw that out there. I have, I think I put it on the bottom of the screen there. Yeah, I got Patreon, I got YouTube. There's a join button down there. There's PayPal, there's Venmo, there's various ways to help me out. Buy me a cup of coffee, that sort of thing. It's all in the description section of the videos. There's links to all that stuff. And super chats, of course, are awesome. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there because every bit helps. I am 100% fan funded by you guys. And even more importantly, if you all out there are in need of any kind of consultation on this topic of coercive control, culty behavior, how do you get a friend or a family member out? Like, how do you do that? If you have somebody that you need help with specifically and individually, maybe I can help. Or alternatively, if you know somebody or you yourself are somebody who has gotten out of a coercive situation or need help getting out of a coercive situation, whether it's a cult or a domestic partnership or some other situation, you can contact me and I'd be more than willing and happy to help you out with that. I do charge for that, right? That is time, but I have helped people and they've been pretty happy with me about it. So I think it's the kind of stories that I can never broadcast. Every one of my consultations is completely private. I never talk about them. So I can't really broadcast testimonials to you guys. Maybe I should get some, but anyway, I do. No, Liz, you should never stop watching me. Love that comment. Okay. Oh, that's an interesting question, Supreme Ruler. Do you have views on the role the story and imagery of the crucifixion in Christian religions has played through the ages? Still an effective tool today or largely irrelevant to mindset? No, I think it has everything to do with the Christian mindset because the base level of the Christian mindset has everything to do with Christ as a sacrificial figure, right? And that represents, depending on your specifics of your belief, tends to represent various very, very emotionally important values, and also reminds or puts there that this dude made the ultimate sacrifice for you. And that's the whole basis of the worship, is that we, being born into original sin and being sinful creatures who are never, forgiven or are even, are just basically evil by nature, require this sacrifice, require this belief in order to even be considered good, moral, or even rational creatures. It's all on God, right? And it's our job to submit to that authority. And again, this is a nuanced thing, right? Not all Christians buy all the way into Gothard's crap, for example. But to one degree or another, that iconography, that symbolism communicates those kinds of values to people and reminds them of them. And I think that's why we see those worldwide, because a lot of people fall into that mindset because they are super hyper aware of their own flaws. They thought police themselves. They are aware of all their evil, horrible, impulses and desires and deeds. And they know, therefore, that they are sinful creatures. And so it's easy to connect with that dogma or that belief set. And I don't happen to think it's a very good thing for people, but most of the world does. And that's a real, that's a problem as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, Bart Ehrman goes really, really into to details on this stuff. He's real good. Oh, yeah. No, Supreme Ruler, you're also not wrong in that more and more people these days, by statistic, are seeing, at least in the United States, I know this is true. I can't speak for statistically outside the United States, but Pew Research very clearly shows that over the last 20 years, there has been I think 10% decline in church membership kind of across the boards, and less people are identifying with a major religion. And that symbolism for people who are not brought up under it or who reject it becomes exactly what you said, right? A death culty kind of unchristian sort of thing. And so you can have, obviously both views exist. And it appears in more recent times as more and more information through the information age, computer age, internet age, as we are exposed to more and more culture, more and more different ideas, more and more different value sets and belief sets, our fixation on any one belief set is becoming less and less. And it's probably a good thing, probably. But we always have to be aware of the fact that that the nature of us craves these answers, craves these solutions, craves emotional comfort. And if a religion can offer that in a non-abusive, non-harmful way, great, I'm all for it. Because they tend to also offer a moral guidance that some people really need. Maybe you don't need it, maybe I don't need it, but I acknowledge the fact that some people do. They're not good people unless somebody is standing over them or they believe they are being watched 24/7 by some supernatural figure. And therefore, they act in a socially acceptable way where their proclivities or impulses would not push them in that direction. So it serves so religion serves a very interesting set of purposes in our society, good and bad. And I'll highlight the bad all day long because I don't want the abusive stuff. But that's not to paint the entire thing with, some big black brush of bad. Yeah, there we go. That's right. All we're saying is give peace a chance. That's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The passion. Yeah. Odd and horrid, if you ask me. Me too. I have real big problems with the base beliefs of Christianity as far as the misogyny that's kind of baked into it. The whole Adam Eve thing and all that, and how women are the cause of all the problems in the world. And this is the basis for an awful lot of really abusive behavior directed towards women. I don't think that's even controversial. I don't think that's a really wild thing to say. It's so baked into, Islam and Christianity and even Judaism to a degree that that kind of that misogyny at the it's bad. And the self-sacrifice, and the whole I am nothing before you and I must submit and all this kind of stuff. I'm not for it. That's why I'm not religious. I have religious ideas, but I'm not, I'm not connected with any major religion because none of them reflect my ideas. I just don't want to. I don't want to kowtow to anybody else ever again. I already spent most of my life doing that, and it wasn't fun, and it wasn't comfortable, and I don't think it's an empowering thing to take away people's power. I don't think that's the way to empower people. Oh, that's a great point, Ron. Maybe that's why women are more inclined to search for answers and join high control groups and MLMs. Good point. Good point. All right. Well, guys, I think I'm going to start wrapping up. This will be your last 20 seconds to throw a question at me, and then I'm going to go. Yes. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. I love a lot of the wordplay and the literature, sort of some religious texts. Pulp Fiction was not directly quoting the Bible, but it could have been. I mean, the whole rant about that was pretty awesome. But as far as a literature thing goes, right? Sinners in the hands of an angry God. It's fun to read, but I don't believe it. Not for a second. All right. Anyway, thanks, guys. I think we'll go now. This was a fun live stream. Hey, wow, hour and a half. That passed quick. All right. And all that being said, let's wrap it up. Bye-bye.